So now that I've linked a couple of marks there, I can then go back, bring up my marks panel again, and you can see that it was hidden. So I could either bring it up from the taskbar at the bottom, or I can bring it up just again here. What I can do is on the right-hand side here with here, it's got automatic mark linking. And so basically what's that's doing is it's basically, instead of me going through every mark that I've captured and trying to see if there is a mark in Landonline that I want to link it to, or needs to be linked to, and do it manually like those other two marks, this one will look at the ones that haven't been linked so far and see whether they can link it with a mark already in Landonline. If I click on that icon, it brings up some options there. So the first one is manual. So if I selected that, it would just let me go back and manually link the marks like I did with those first two. The other numbers that it's got there are basically a spatial tolerance. So effectively, when we looked at that peg number 5 there, and we saw that it was separated from the mark in Landonline, it depends on how far far away they are, would depend on the tolerance that I'm looking for. This is a sort of a survey in the residential area, so it should be relative. The accuracy of the marks should all be relatively close together. So when I was going in here and looking at my tolerance, I'd probably start with the smallest tolerance. So effectively, it's going to look at all my captured marks and see whether there is an existing mark within 0.03 of a meter radius of that captured mark. Obviously, if I was going to go and select 3 meters, for example, it's going to look at every captured mark that I have in my data set and then try and connect that to existing marks in Landonline that are within 3 meters of that captured mark. You can imagine in a residential area, there may be a number of marks fairly close together, and so I don't really want to start with 3 meters. It's always recommended that we start with the smallest first. So if I just select that, it's obviously saying it's going through. You can see it's going through and looking at all those captured marks, and it's told me that it's completed. It tells me in the window here that pops up the results of that mark linking. So it says, okay, the tolerance I used was 0.03 of a meter. There are 17 marks in my survey. There are 3 marks that were linked before. Sorry, 2 marks linked before, and there's now 3 marks linked. So it says there are 14 marks that could not be linked as there were no underlying marks within that specified tolerance. So there was no, for the 14 captured marks, there was no other marks in Landonline within that 0.03 meter radius of those marks. So again, if I'm looking at that, I'd say, okay, maybe it's a little bit further out than what I need to. So then I could go back and do it again, and I could maybe select 0.10 of a meter. And so it'll go through and do that automatic processing while trying to link the marks again. And you can see that there were 3 marks linked before, and there's now 10 marks linked. So that's a lot better. It's given me a lot more connection to the information that's already in Landonline. If I just minimize, go back out there, you can see that all these boxes have appeared because, that number 2 and number 5 are the ones I'd linked before. So basically it's using those to tighten up my captured vectors and captured marks and trying to fit them better with Landonline. And it may be just that things aren't quite connected or as close as they should be. But you can now see it's now got these blue boxes around all these Mark 4, Mark 7, and all these other ones around here. So you can see that they've been automated, or they've been linked using that automatic linking process. It's got that one there as well. So what I'm doing now is just visually looking to see what other marks I think should actually be linked. And I'm pretty sure that most of them are linked correctly. I can use the layers on the right hand side. There's a toolbar there. In the middle, I can select layers, and I'm wanting to basically look at the marks. I'm wanting to look at the underlying marks. So you remember when we selected the linking process, it automatically brought up those orange symbols, which were the existing marks. Now they're called the underlying marks, which is basically the existing marks in Landonline. I'm going to turn those on. You can see they all appear. So what I'm looking at now, if I can just close that, what you can see is that there should be orange marks for all these linked ones, because it's saying that all those marks there have marks in Landonline, and I've now connected to them. I'm looking at these other marks, so 3 there is no orange mark around that, and effectively that's IronTube 1, so it's a new mark, so I wouldn't expect to see an existing mark there anyway, because it's a new mark which has never been captured in Landonline before. Same with these new pegs. Obviously, they're new pegs, so there aren't any pegs there before. That's a new boundary. I'm subdividing this underlying parcel. I can see if I scroll down to the corner here that you can see there are two marks relatively close together, but I can clearly see that they are different positions. There's an adjoining parcel here, which the boundary is further down. So it's linked to the correct mark. I'm happy with that. I'm looking at the other corners there, and I can see that yes, they've linked their correct marks there. That's not going to link because it doesn't have anyone. So you can see that result that came up with the mark linking, it said that there were 10 marks linked, but there were still some that weren't linked. Now they're not linked because they are new marks and they're not going to have existing positions in Landonline. So I wouldn't expect them all to be linked. So just looking at it graphically, I can see that, or visually, I can see that the marks that I expect to be linked are all linked, and I'm happy with that. So I could carry on with the next part of the process.